I can hardly believe I'm saying this, but the S23 Ultra is 3 months old. Where has the time gone, right? I mean, really, where's it gone? I don't even know. Well, it's interesting talking about this now because there's a lot of excitement going around in the smartphone world. And the S23 Ultra, I think, is still at the top. I think it's king of the hill for right now. And, well, it's going to be a little while before anything really comes around that challenges it. And we have Google I/O coming up. That's a big thing, especially if you follow this channel. You know that the Pixel Fold is supposed to be announced on May 10th. So we're just barely over a week away from that. Also, the Pixel 7a. I don't really think either one of those are really going to do anything about the market share and the prominence of the S23 Ultra. And the S23 Ultra, one thing that's been nice is it's actually been the best-selling phone they've had for quite a while, and the S23 series has kind of made a turnaround in what's happened with Samsung over the last few years, where they've actually had sales go down every year. So even with the economy not being great, even with the price of these things, the $1199 S23 Ultra is still doing really, really well. And the great thing about it is it's been a great phone. I don't really have any criticism for it at all that I can think about. I don't know. I mean, other than, like, the shutter speed actually has gotten a little bit better. And the camera has got a couple of refinements. We've had some things here and there. Some folks complaining about it. Some folks complaining about the HDR. Some nighttime stuff. Some skin tone stuff. There was a big camera push update that came out a few weeks ago. And I know that that's helped out quite a bit in some areas. It's still not perfect. But that's what you get when you get a new camera. So we had that 108 megapixel camera for a few years. When you use a camera for 2 or 3 years, it's a different beast than it is when it comes out. So there takes some optimization, and when you get a new image signal processor, when you get a new system on a chip and a new camera, all at the same time, there's a little bit of a learning curve and some communication between those three things that can really be optimized and really make it special. And that's one of the reasons why Google hangs on to theirs for so long in their Pixel phones. But actually something really exciting about the the Pixel 8 series, it's looking like they're going to get a brand new camera after just a 2-year cycle. Which that's big. If Google's already moving to a new one, it tells you they're still trying to maintain their competitive edge over there. So that'll be an interesting conversation this fall when we have S23 Ultra versus the Pixel 8 and 8 Pro series. But apples to apples, oranges to oranges. Of course, they're going to be different in their own way. You've got One UI versus the stock Pixel experience. But the S23 Ultra, yeah, it's one of those things where it's always interesting because when the phones come out at the beginning of the year, and that's what Samsung does, it's amazing how good their phones are and how polished and refined and how powerful they are and how enjoyable they are. They come out at the beginning of the year and then they compete all year. I mean, they're competing with the iPhone 15 when it comes out later. That's not going to be here until September. And this phone came out February 1st is when it was announced. So they have a huge lead time, and they still, it's a topic of conversation we have at the end of the year. It's a topic of conversation. People call them phone of the year the week it comes out. Which, I mean, I guess it's great for clicks. I don't know how responsible that is, but at least it's good for clicks, right? And it's something that some people, you share that sentiment. You can look at it, you can use this phone and go, wow, this is the best experience that Samsung has made yet on a phone. And that's how I feel about it. I think it's the best Samsung phone they ever made. I thought the S22 Ultra was the best one. I said that all last year. And then they fixed the problems that the S22 Ultra had, which was battery life, heat management, some camera issues. Those things were all fixed. And how did that happen? Well, they quit making their own processors for it, for one. So Google had to quit before they could win. And I said that in a previous video. It's just funny to me to talk about that because, well, Samsung actually helps make the Snapdragon chips. And also, they ditched the Exynos. So no Exynos chip in the S23 Ultra. So TSMC made all the Qualcomm chips that we're using. So that's a big win. And then also, all the folks that are used to getting the Exynos chip internationally, you guys came over that significant hurdle. So now everybody, it's like Snapdragon for all, and all for Snapdragon, and all for one. And that's great because everybody wins. And that's something that's really lifted this up across the board. I know it wasn't quite as life-changing for us here in the States, but internationally, I know it was a big game changer because there was a lot of consistency and heat-related issues, camera issues, software optimization issues that the S22 Ultra had. Thankfully, I didn't experience that because I had a US model, but I know that other folks did, and it was just such a godsend for people to get this. They were like, oh my gosh, thank goodness that Samsung finally gave up and quit giving us the crappy Exynos chip. So I think there's been a lot of improvements here, and it doesn't look like it at face value. Like the S22 Ultra looks almost identical to this phone, except for they kind of blocked off the sides and a little less subtle curved edge display. But I think it's the best screen they've had ever in their phone. I think it's really good. The only thing that's not that great is the PWM, like the refresh stuff and the brightness, the way that it messes with people's eyes who are sensitive to that type of lighting. It's not the best for that. So if I could criticize one thing, the PWM is not that great on here, and people have noticed that. So I would like to see them, I don't know if they can fix that with the software update, but definitely looking towards the Fold 5, looking towards the S24 series next year. That's something they need to clean up. But the screen, it looks beautiful. High refresh rate, 5,000 milliamp battery. We've got the ever so popular S Pen. One thing I missed though, and I guess another thing I could point my finger at, they just have these generic S Pens. They're not color coordinated. They're just as plain black ones. They just have the color down on the tip, like the back of it right here. That's all you get. So I wish that they would have them color coordinated. That would be nice. But yeah, the Snapdragon 8 Generation 2 really revolutionized a lot of stuff in these phones. And that's something that I was really looking forward to. I'd heard so many things. I've been doing research. I've been following along. And just getting that Snapdragon 8 Generation 2 instantly fixed so many of the problems that we had with the S22 Ultra. The heating, the software optimization, the battery life, the standby time. Standby time has gotten so much better. This is actually a full day phone for me as a power user. Like, I can just use this thing all day long. I don't have any battery anxiety for it. Like, it's been such a good experience, and it fixed so many things, basically all the complaints I had about it. And that shows that Samsung's listening. And I'm happy to hear that. Like, they're not listening in the department about innovation, but they're listening to the department where we have problems. And if you can address the problems and just bring everything up across the board and make it so much better of an experience, more optimized, more calibrated, more fine-tuned, more powerful. I mean, they have an exclusive, it's called the Snapdragon for Samsung chip kind of program, I guess. This is actually clocked higher than the Snapdragon 8 Generation 2 normally is. It's clocked at 3.36 gigahertz, that's a lot of power. So you can play AAA titles on here. You can play plenty of games. You've got all this horsepower for the computational photography, the AI, the machine learning, for the camera stuff, for the videography. And they, of course, coined the phrase nightography. They really stepped it up in the nighttime photography and video experience. So, yeah, I've been a big fan ever since day one. And I didn't think I was going to be. Like, I did not think I was going to be surprised by it. I did not think I was going to be excited about it because it just looks so similar. The experience kind of feels similar in many ways from the software perspective because there weren't that many big changes in One UI. And then you start using it, and then you realize how nice and tight of a package it is. It's great. The haptic feedback is good. The camera, it's much better than I thought it was going to be for a 200 megapixel camera. I thought it was going to be overly gimmicky. The battery life, game-changing in a big way, even competing and beating Apple. So, yeah, 3 months later, I'm still very happy with this phone. Other than they just didn't have great sale or trade-in stuff unless you got them through the carrier here in the US. But internationally, it seemed like there were some pretty good deals too. So I think really they know that people get locked in. Last year, it was US unlocked phones through Samsung. They really tried to get people on board. And then now the S23 series this year put it out to the carriers and internationally to get people on board and had good discounts and incentives that way. So I don't know how Samsung's going to do next year with this because they're just basically losing money out the rear right now because of the significant downturn in people buying things with chips and RAM chips. Samsung is one of the biggest manufacturers for like RAM and chips and stuff like that in the world. And they're looking at like basically their profits cutting like 90-something% in one quarter over last year. Like, it's not good. So we'll see how things go with incentives and trade-ins and stuff, but that might be something that's kind of holding back why they didn't have amazing stuff here in the US for as far as trade-ins and buys and stuff like that. But anyway, 3 months later, I think it's still the best Samsung phone ever made. I think it's probably the best phone you can get on the market right now. I mean, I know people might not want to pay $1199 for an S23 Ultra, but I think it's probably the best. And the S23, the regular one, top notch. The S23 Plus, that's also an option out there. So there's different size options, different price points, but this is a pretty complete phone. I think it's the most complete and best phone that Samsung to date has ever made, at least as far as the regular slab phones go. And then also 3 months later, still using the official leather case. It's holding up really well. You can see this is a fantastic and excellent option. I love their leather cases. I think that they're great. I try to get them on as many Samsung phones as I possibly can. I always use my trade-in credit for it. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. So just sharing that. So not much left to say here, other than we'll see you again, I guess, in 3 months. But I think it's a great phone. 3 months later, I'm happy with what Samsung did with it. So that's all I've got. If you have any questions or comments, please go into the comment section. I'll get back with you. If you've got one, if you've been using one, if you've had a really good experience with it, or even a bad experience, I'd love to hear all that, because I've heard those before too. Go to the comment section. We can discuss it. But I think overall, Samsung did pretty good. Now, as always, if you enjoyed the video, please hit the like and the subscribe button and the little notification bell if you want updates when new videos come out. And as always, thanks for being here. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys next time.